by Mark Chichester. I'm hesitating because he said it can be Chichester or Chichester, depending on whether you're English, and I already forgot which is which, so. Mark is joining us from San Francisco, where he is the Director of Design Development at Ammunition. And he was involved, I believe we're going to hear about this, with the Beats project, the headphones, which is why my son wanted to come because he thought we were all going to get it. He's going to be very disappointed. Mark, I think I'm going to let you tell us more about the work that you do, but we're very excited that both of you could join us. And where is thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to start by saying thank you to Andres for inviting me, to Anna, Jay, Tori, everyone who's been involved with these 3 units that you just heard about, for inviting Mark and myself to this evening. And thank you to all of you for coming out here. I've heard that it's hard to get an audience together when it's summer in DC, so thanks for showing up. So the topic of today's discussion is designing the future. And I told Mark earlier this afternoon, we've been chatting about this for quite a while. We're trying to sort of blend and have a discussion rather than a presentation followed by another presentation. So I've asked him to interrupt me, tell me I'm full of shit, tell me I'm wrong, or agree with me, that's okay. And I want the audience to do the same. So please, we don't have to wait till the end for questions. It might be much more fun if it's more dialogic than just so let me grab the microphone. Go for it. All right, so the phrase "designing the future," there's several problems with this term, and it needs to be problematized in many ways. So the term designing deals with creativity, deals with innovation. It's often seen as sort of this mysterious act that you start with an idea or a problem, and you end up with a tangible thing. And the future, what do we look like? We can try to create models, try to predict, try to forecast, develop foresight, but it's really two mysterious things here. How do you connect them together? Well, I was thinking of another phrase that might be interesting to think about, which is shaping the future. And I like the word shaping because in many ways what design does is it gives shape to things, shapes to things. Whether it's a building, a product, a graphic, a website, a book, and we shape things and shape the future by design. And of course, using the word, thinking of the term shaping led me to this man who, it's just incredible how many quotable quotes Winston Churchill had. How could one man say so many quotable things? Anyway, this is one of his phrases that I really enjoy, which sort of talks about this relationship between us, and in this case he's talking about buildings. And we spend all this time designing buildings, creating spaces, and we, as we all know, are shaped by these buildings in which we inhabit. Well, I would argue that we don't have to restrict this to just buildings. All things that we design in turn shape who we are and what we do. And as you can see in this case, we are controlled in many ways by these things that we live with. I don't really know if this man uses all these codes, but it looked like a really interesting image. I googled the phrase "surrounded by things," and this is what popped up. This is perfect. This is perfect. So anyway, so this idea that there's a sense of reciprocity. We design things and then they design us in turn, which I think is really interesting, something to think about with design. And so this is what this word agency actually has been popping up quite a bit in anthropological literature, in design studies, in cultural studies. That it's not just us as humans that have agency. Non-humans, which is objects, natural systems, also have agency. And it's really important for us to take that into account when we design things, that things can in turn design us as well. And you can see that, right? Get massaged by your seat, or get pinned to your seat. These are, in some sense, agentic objects. These objects have agency. They have means of changing, influencing, and modifying our behaviors and our lifestyle and routines. And we have hundreds, if not thousands, of things that we are surrounded by, that we live with, that we shape and shape it back in turn. So one of the things that's been talked about in anthropology primarily is this notion of this duality between the object and the subject. So subject meaning us, we who observe this world of objects. And if we are now saying that objects also have agency, they too can shape us, what anthropologists are talking about is this notion that maybe this is not such a hard divide. We need to think of this notion of the object and subject a lot more fluidly. Maybe it's not a hard line that separates the black and the white. There's not lots of gray areas and fuzzy areas between the two. And that's this notion of trying to dissolve the duality between object and subject is something that anthropologists are writing about quite a bit. Actually, there's this movement in anthropology referred to as the material turn. That we need to think more carefully about how we shape the world around us because it does shape us back. Important stuff for us as designers. Just talked to Brad earlier about this phrase. Alan Kay, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And it's an interesting term, and Brad has some variations on it. But in some ways, one of the things I worry about this is it gives us perhaps a bit too much agency, that we might be in control and we might be able to invent all that happens. Well, I think it should give us pause to think that maybe there are other things that could happen as well. That we can try, but may not always succeed, or things might not go the way we intend or plan. And this man, who apparently Alan Kay's definition, his definition predates Alan's, and this is perhaps maybe a little bit more interesting because in some sense he uses the term futures. And this, for people who do future studies, this I think is pretty important, that it's not a singular future that we might see, but it could be multiple futures. And so this whole idea of scenario planning, where people spend time trying to figure out what might the future look like, or what might futures look like. So it's important for us to think about not a singular future, but multiple futures that we might shape by design, by technology, by social practices, etc. So I think this is slightly more nuanced and more interesting. And then Alex Steffen, who actually spent some time trying to design reimagined cities, he says that we really can't do this. We can't shape it, we can't dictate it, but what we can do is we can build capacity. So perhaps we can, maybe through such discussions, maybe through courses, maybe by writing about it more, trying things out, maybe we can build capacity that will give us what we refer to as unforeseen, give us some means by which we can deal with it and work with it and move us towards more desirable futures rather than undesirable futures. So I thought this was a very interesting way to think about it. So in terms of how do you build capacity, how do you train students, how do you think about this stuff, go back to ASU, so I've, like Andreas introduced me, I teach at ASU, I've been there since the year 2000, and Mark came to ASU in 2001 or 2002, neither of us can remember. They say it's because Mark used to be my student 10 years ago. So I've been at ASU since then. I'm a faculty member in the design school. My training is in product design or industrial design, as is Mark's. But one of the things I spend quite a good bit of time doing at ASU is running a program called Innovation Space, which Andreas mentioned as well. And what you see here is our studio space at ASU, where we have student teams that are working. The fundamental idea of Innovation Space is to create a sort of transdisciplinary lab where students from a variety of disciplines can work with faculty, can work with corporations. So it's a joint venture that was launched about 10 years ago among several schools at ASU, the School of Engineering, the School of Business, the Design School, of course, and our reasonably new School of Sustainability. So we have an undergraduate degree in sustainability, as well as a master's and a PhD. So what we've done in this program is we put teams of students together. So this is one of my extremely happy teams from last year. And so this team, let's see, Michelle, they just graduated a couple months ago. Michelle was a business student. Edmund is an industrial designer. Jake is a student from the School of Sustainability. Mark is a graphic designer, and Jenna is an engineering student. So what we've tried to do, and these students, they are all undergrads, they were working on their senior year capstone project. They have a year-long project to work on. And it's really fantastic that they have a year-long capstone because they are my captive audience for a whole year, fall semester and spring semester. We do lots of fun stuff over 2 semesters. It's tough to take a problem and try to solve it within 2 years, let alone 1 semester. So So these guys were working on a project designing accessories and components for wheelchairs. The project they worked on actually was a new kind of cushion that can minimize a pressure source for someone who's sitting in a wheelchair for, say, 15, 15, 16 hours a day. And so what's interesting about this sort of a team, and I have 6 teams working in the studio, what's interesting about this kind of a team is that we get a product design solution. So Edmund, who's the industrial designer, worked on the actual product design. The graphic designer develops a brand strategy, visual marketing materials. The engineering student for his or her capstone is required to build a proof of concept prototype, something that demonstrates the functionality of the object. The business student writes a business plan or business model, like how would you commercialize this. And finally, the sustainability student comes up with a sustainability strategy, which includes life cycle assessment. I mean, it's not very in-depth, but that's incredibly hard to do. But they create a suite of materials, including models and posters and prototypes that give us some sense for the breadth of work that's required if you want to take on complex problems, like making life easy for somebody in a wheelchair. So this has been a project that I've been involved with for quite a while, and it's incredible fun to teach, but it keeps me on my toes. I had no training in how to do a business model, but I've had to learn. I had no training in sustainability, but I've had to learn. And we work with corporations. We've done projects with Herman Miller, designing furniture for healthcare spaces. Did a project with Intel, designed. The idea was this notion of aging in place. You know, we all know that our homes are incredibly unsafe. So as you get older and you want to continue to live in your own home beyond 75, 80, 85, how can we do that? Can we design products and services that help with that? So Intel's really interested in that. Design products for children with autism. With Disney, products for the aging population with Procter & Gamble. So those are the kinds of projects that we've been working on through Innovation Space. But we use this model of design and innovation that asks 4 key questions. So this class starts with this model. Before you design something, ask, does it bring any value to people? It's one really important thing. Second question, can we build this? Is it possible through engineering? Third question, does it make sense from a business sense? And the last question, which is probably asked least, is it good for society and is it good for the environment? And so we think that, of course, these 4 questions are incredibly complex, difficult to ask, but good design, good innovation exists in the center of that Venn diagram. If we can answer all these 4 questions in some sense of confidence and comfort, that yeah, this stuff makes sense. I think I've tried to address all 4 questions. You've got something that is sustainable, it's profitable, it's good utility, and it's cool. So just a couple of examples of projects that we've done. This was done by a team last year. Again, another wheelchair project. You know, one of the things that, so if you have a C4, C5 quadriplegic who's in a power chair, they have limited mobility from neck down. In many cases, they might not be able to flex their fingers. How does a person in a wheelchair, C4, C5 quadriplegic, use a phone? Will they travel with it in their laps? iPad, phone, set of keys, water bottle, wallet, all that is in the laps. Imagine what happens if it falls off as they're riding to the street somewhere. They have to wait for somebody to come by and pick it up for them. That's one big problem. We work on some storage solutions. But also, they always have to use it in speaker mode. They can't have any privacy. So this was a solution to that. It has speakers built in into the headrest, and it connects via Bluetooth, so they can have a private conversation. At least what the other person is saying can be private. It also had a camera in the back, sort of backup camera, and it's really often not possible. It's not possible for them to turn their neck and look around what's happening backward. We had situations where people have fallen because they couldn't see where they were going. So there's a camera in the back that sort of tilts and gives an image on their iPhone or iPad, so they know if they're backing up where exactly they're going. Just an example of some of the projects that the students have done. So clearly we need a process of how to do this. I have two semesters that I work with the students, and we have a really well-defined, complex, precise process that we use. It looks like this. This is sort of the design process. This is done by a graphic designer called Damien Newman. And he talks about this, and we all know this. So the early phase of any design project, actually any project for that matter, right? It's the sort of fuzzy front end. Lots of ambiguity, we don't know what problem we're solving, we're not sure how many resources we have. There's tons of stuff that's unknown at this time. One of the first things I have to tell students is you have to get comfortable with ambiguity. It makes the engineers extremely nervous. The students are asking me, how the hell do you create this stuff? But eventually, it gets slightly easier. But, I think this, it never flatlines. I mean, it stays a mess throughout. Maybe a little flatlining at the end, but it's a bit of a mess. But we have to give some structure to this mess, so we sort of break this down, at least for the students, in sort of several chunks. They start with identifying the problem. So we don't really give them a problem. So I'd go ahead and design a better cushion for somebody in a wheelchair. What we sell them is, all right, so we need to do what we can by design to make everyday life better for somebody in a wheelchair. So we have 2 wheelchairs in the studio, they check them out, they do autoethnography, they spend time in those chairs. So they actually then go out and identify the problem. Well, we discovered problem is pressure source, we discovered a problem with communication, we discovered, and then they start working on the problem. So they have to identify the problem. Problem finding is probably more important than problem solving. You might find a stupid problem that nobody needs any solution for and spend years and deal with it all the time to solve. And then they conduct research, lots of ethnographic research. They generate insights that they can sort of use to brainstorm ideas. Fall semester ends here. Jump into spring, they select some of those ideas, they start developing those in much more detail, and finally they sort of develop their models, prototypes, etc. And if there's time, go back and modify some of the things that we've done. So this is sort of the process that we follow in the class. But I wanted to just kind of step back a little and ask this broader question of what actually design is. I mean, it's a rather common word, we use it all the time. Thinking from sort of the professional point of view of being a designer, there's several forms or several flavors of design. Mark and I happen to be product designers or industrial designers, but there's graphic design, web design, transportation design, car design, fashion design, apparel design, architecture, landscape architecture, interior design, using or experience design, user interaction design. So all of these are various forms of design. But if you kind of step back and what is design activity all about, this is Dick Buchanan, the title of design philosopher. So what he does is slightly tricky, and I don't quite agree with it. He divides the world into the artificial world and the natural world. There's lots of weird stuff in between that even all or both. Anyway, he says, so what designers do is they conceive of and plan the artificial world. All the stuff you're sitting on, walking on, living by, etc. So 2 problems. One, I don't think we can separate the natural from the artificial as cleanly as Buchanan is trying to do. And second, it's not just conception and planning. I think there's a lot of making that's involved in design that's entirely distinct from what is said. This is Max Bill, who was the rector of one of the most influential design schools from the 1950s in Germany called Ulm School of Design. He says design participates, he's not being very cautious with it, participates in the making of a new culture that extends from the smallest artifact to a big place up to large metropolitan cities. So the design engages all of that and we end up creating new cultures, shaping people's lives, etc. Herbert Simon, courses of action. So anyone who is engaged in courses of action that changes the very broad definition, existing to preferred. We hope that most of the time what we do is going from existing to preferred. I'm sure there are many times where we have messed up and not taken us into preferred situations. And this is, again, a very positive and optimistic definition of what design does. So, one of my first jobs after finishing design school, this was back in India, was working as a designer for Vespa of India. And what we were doing at this time, this goes back to late 1980s. We're getting molds from Italy. In some cases, sort of refurbishing the molds, some cases recreating those molds, sort of banging out the sheet metal and making scooters. And this is really fantastic and incredibly dashing, and it looks super cool. But this is not how scooters are used in India. So one of the first things, as young designers, we can't sell Italian bloody scooters. They are great, but we can't do that in India. So one of the first things we started doing is what is now referred to as guerrilla ethnology. So riding around in these scooters, taking surreptitious photographs of people, research ethics, taking photographs, shooting video, just kind of trying to see how people use this stuff. And it was a really interesting dilemma. Do we provide more space for a sixth child? Do we provide hangers and hooks for extra bags? Does that make the scooter unsafer but more usable? And all these sort of questions of human-centered design pop into play. And then we wanted to create a scooter that has an Indian look. Nobody wanted that. They want to fix stuff that look Japanese and Italian, Indian stuff is awful. So all our ideas of doing vernacular design were completely shot by the consumer. We love that. We were the only people who love it. It's from a designer loving the world. So that's this idea of the notion of human-centered design. Can we design for human need? Can we design for people? There's quite a bit of emphasis on this. There's quite a few publications. This is the HCD handbook developed by a design firm called IDEO. You can download some of the PDFs and buy the books if you'd like, the hard copies. But this is a response, in some sense, to design that's purely technology-driven. That there might be a cool new emerging tech. Let's develop something around it. We don't care if no one wants it, there's no need for it. It's also a response in some ways to heavily market-driven design, but there's some space in the market that's designed for that. So there is some value to human-centered design, but I'm seeing some issues with it as well. So we have these wonderful utilitarian objects like the Swiss Army knife, but in some ways we've kind of taken things out of hand. Who can carry this in their pocket? It's ridiculous. So design for need, sometimes I think we sort of variegate these needs into really small components, and I think it's a bit too much. So I love going to Crate and Barrel and Williams Sonoma to look at things like, let's see, this is an avocado masher. This is a apple slicer. This is an apple peeler. This is an apple corer. This is a strawberry corer. This is a strawberry slicer. This is a banana slicer. Jalapeno corer. Corn husker. Cherry pitter. Mango pitter. And a peach slicer. I use this. So in some sense you start wondering, so yes, we are designing for human need, but are we going a little crazy with this stuff? Do we really need all these gadgets? Do we need all this stuff? Keeps us in business. So one of the things I worry about with human-centered design is this notion that I've said with viewers. Clearly we are not. The latest thing I read in Nature was that we are one of, I think it said 8.7 million species. Plus or minus 1.3 million. And I think more than 91% of the species living in the oceans we have yet to discover. So we are one of those species represented by fantastic Mr. Darwin. And so should we be thinking of a model like this, which I think we follow right now, dudes on top, we act as apex predators? Doesn't this make a lot more sense? Should we not be thinking of, let's learn from and design for all species rather than just humans? So one of the things we are doing at ASU is sort of shifting from this notion of human-centered design to life-centered design. Can we start thinking of not just us as selfish designers, but thinking of all of the species and plan to learn from them and to design for them as well. Hence, our interest in biomimicry. So over the past, we launched this new center. You can see more about it at biomimicry.asu.edu in partnership with a group called Biomimicry 3.8. So you might know of Janine Benyus. She wrote this book in 1998 called Biomimicry: Innovation Inspired by Nature. Nature through evolution, through 3.8 billion years of evolution, has been adapting, always has been reacting to how to live in the conditions in which they live, and can we learn from how organisms operate, how ecosystems operate to inspire human design. So that's one thing that we're working on, shifting towards this notion of life cycle design. So I have written there in there somewhere, right? So it's, you have to be careful about where you are going because you might not get there. I think what's maybe scarier than that is we actually may get there. And so I think as we sort of vision for, plan for, and look at the future, I think it's important to think about what that looks like. I'm going to hand this over to Mark. Yes, right.
You asked a question.
We can do a switcheroo while.
So the focus of all of your talk is about getting us to the point where we have a product. About all the stuff that happens from the fuzzy front end to the actual realization of the product. But you implied a little bit about the impact that products have. And none of your talk discussed anything at all about the implications of what happens when we put those products in use.
So I should mention that. So one of the things that designers often say that we design products, it's a bit of a fallacy. I think products are designed in conjunction, as a conjunction between users, between designers and consumers. Again, going back to anthropology, they use this term called bricolage, which is essentially, in some sense, we create platforms or create locations where people can add additional meanings. There's simple examples, a book. A book essentially is something you can, that holds information. But you could hide something in it, you could use it to support a short leg of the table, you could whack someone on the side of the head with it, it becomes a weapon. So the meaning of the object actually emerges in how it is used. So I think consumers themselves are designers as well. We'll get to that a little bit towards after Mark's talk, because what we've tried to do is, Mark will talk about his work at Ammunition. Then we have a few points that we've held up as discussion points. Hope you get engaged with that at that time. So Mark was a student of ours at ASU, and he and I shared this interest in design, of course, but also an interest in music. And I think Mark will talk a bit more about his interest in music, but that's what connected the two of us together. So I'm happy to have Mark here to talk about his work at Ammunition.
Thanks, Prasad. So Prasad's a much better presenter than I, so I'm going to stay real close to my notes. So I know what you're all thinking. Of course, the guy from California has long hair, but it's a new development. And I've only lived there for 5 years, and that's long enough to grow long. But so when Prasad and I first started talking about this, I think the idea was to look at the overall context of human design, and also, kind of a case study about some of the work that Ammunition's done, and that's the overall idea of what we'll do here today. So thanks for having me. It's the first time I've been to Washington, D.C. I think the last time I came close, was it the 95? That's the big highway. The last time I drove through, I was in a 1985 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, and the air conditioning gave out right as we broke into city limits in July. So everything's come kind of full circle because my hotel also has broken AC right now. So I don't know what's happening there, but I've got some DC karma with the heat, but it's all right. So who is this guy? You're probably hearing about Ammunition, probably would rather hear from the founder, Robert Werner. He's a very accomplished industrial designer. But Prasad and I, given our history, I think he asked us to handle this and have a discussion of it. So I'm the director of design development at Ammunition, and what that means is, well, we kind of made it up, and the reason we don't quite have made it up is because not only as designers, but in my role there, what we do fluctuates quite a bit. So what I do is kind of a hybrid of product management, product development, and program management. So depending on where we are in the design
process. I kind of plug in and out of these various client-facing and production type roles. So I might help plan, I might help the team plan what we're doing with a given project, and then, you know, as the concepts are happening, I'll kind of lay back and let the design team do their thing. And then when it's time to get it made, if it's a physical product, I've flown 300,000 miles back and forth to China in the past 2 or 3 years here. So there's a lot of time on the ground there. But basically, I represent our interests, our design interests at every step of the way, with the goal of the highest quality result. So I think I'm going to skip through the career start stuff, but go really to where Prasad and I came together. So I went back to design school, or went back to school in 2001. And so I met Prasad, I started a new second career in restaurants, and a third second career in DJing, all at the same time. And I think that really has shaped where today has landed, because restaurants taught me how to interact with high-level people and anticipate their needs. And ever since then, that's who I like to work with, because high-level, powerful people are influential, they get things done, and they don't take no for an answer. So it's a lot of fun dealing with people like that. And I think that also, now the music part of things is also parallel, because as a DJ and as a designer, we're here to be curatorial. So we're here to help filter through the stuff to get you something that you really want. So whether that's the right song, making the right environment by picking the song, responding to the environment, and taking it further, or in the design context where we have a bunch of all that fuzzy front end stuff that turns into a set of requirements, and then the ID team then actually doesn't take things for face value. So we're going to take a look at those requirements and maybe do some testing and ask why, and bounce those things up against the wall as often as possible to make sure that those assumptions are correct. So that line you saw in the design part doesn't look like that. It goes the same way. So it's a lot of fun. So I think I'm getting ahead of my slides. But so again, this is where Prasad and I intersected with this notion of design and music, and a little bit of food thrown in there. I actually worked at the restaurant for all the design faculty hang out, so I got to know them a little better. And we're all friends. So I freelanced for a little while and started a couple of small consultancies, and then found myself in San Francisco in 2010. And all I knew is I wanted to work at a top-tier design agency and work on bigger budget projects. So I started a Twitter account. And the reason I did that is because I found it to be a really useful research tool, a networking tool. So I followed hashtags at conferences and met interesting people, and somehow got in at Ammunition. And that's when I stopped being a designer. Now I see myself as more of a facilitator, an influencer, and that's where I can bring the most value to the design process, is my the people skills and the strengths and the business sense and such. So a little more about Robert Bruner. He's the founder of Ammunition, industrial designer with a long storied resume. Matt Rollinson and Brett Wickens are managing partners, and experienced designer, strategists, and visual designers is on the right. And this is Robert. For those of you who aren't pop culture savvy, he's the one in the middle. He's had a very successful career in design. He co-founded Lunar Design in 1984. Lunar is actually the funding behind the 99% Invisible podcast. Since that time, Lunar has become a huge multinational interdisciplinary design agency. Robert joined Apple as director of design in 1989, and that's where he created the internal Apple design group, the foundation for it that exists today. And famously, in everything you read about him, in every news article you'll see, he also hired Jonathan Ive. So, it was a really interesting foundational aspect of his work there. He worked on the PowerBook, all the PowerBook lines, the output and such. And later joined a different multinational, now already multinational design firm called Pentagram, and did that for about 10 years. Did a lot of work for Dell, and also did the first Kindle. And that's where the relationship with Pete started, and Robert and his IT team broke off, started Ammunition in 2007. So I think in the context of our subject here and in design in general, I think it's important to, or notable, to take a look at what our philosophy is at Ammunition and how, and I think they're relevant in the way they work and how we've been successful. And so one of those things is the studio life. So we talked about how things around us shape us, and they shape our world, and they shape the way we feel about things. But those things don't have meaning unless we interact with them. And I think the same thing goes for our work environment. And when you have something really special, everyone feels it, everyone wants to contribute to it, and they want to preserve it. And the first part of that is talent. Everyone finds, the leadership team finds great talent there at Ammunition and fosters it, develops it in a way that is almost like family in a way. And I've been a benefactor of that as well, because here I am, you know, in all these different parts of my career. Every time I get bored, they find something new for me to do. So it works out really well. And the hierarchy, super flat, and that fosters this level of collaboration and trust that's so key to having a high quality product. Because if people are afraid of each other, afraid to push new ideas, then you're going to lose something in that process of getting through the squiggles to the flat line. Because it really takes this level of integrated teamwork and access to one another to do something collaborative. And in that same realm, Robert, Matt, and Brett really empower everyone to own things, to make their own decisions, and to, at the same time, everyone's really interested in fulfilling the vision of the leadership there. And it keeps a little separation. I think, so this is a really important point about teams in general. If there's a little bit of separation between the traditional people, the traditional disciplines and design disciplines, that can give the process time to really evolve. And I think we've seen this in companies like Autodesk and Samsung. They've kind of separated their design teams and put them in a little cocoon and gave them space to do their thing. And that's what helps push things to a new level. And so another part is play. So one of the things that's really fun about Ammunition is we're kind of encouraged to play, and this is one of the few organized things we do. There's an annual dodgeball, design industry dodgeball tournament, and it's skewing a little bit male right now because of the dodgeball thing, but there's it's kind of a glimpse into one of the annual things that we do that's a lot of fun. And so this is our office, and we have a pretty solid table tennis culture, partially because half our guys and girls fly around the world to play tennis in factories with with the vendors. So I noticed Martin has a really amazing spin on his serve there. And then I caught the tail end of Reese pretty much demolishing Eric with his return. Computer says waiting. Anyway, well, and now it's stuck. So, and actually you can see the kitchen here. We recently remodeled the office and have this kind of family gathering space. We have a weekly lunch and everyone's kind of in there enjoying themselves. Is this the part where technology works against you?
Stuck?
Yeah.